Hey everyone, what's up? This is the Promised Land podcast with me, Scott Saunders, talking all things Manchester United. It's been a few days since I last recorded, and I'm recording on Friday lunchtime-ish ahead of the Leicester game at Old Trafford on Friday night in the FA Cup. Let's hope. Look, I think you can listen to this podcast. Let's get this out of the way to start with. I think you can listen to this podcast after that game as well, because I'm taking much more of a longer term view based on the news that's been around Manchester United this week and the developments that I've seen and my thoughts on the long-term process that Manchester United are currently trying to put in place. You know, it's bigger than any one game. And if Leicester and Ruben van Nistelrooy turn up to Old Trafford and knock United out of the FA Cup, I think doom and gloom will return. If they manage to get through this game and qualify for the next round, then I think things would just go by without a hitch. But inevitably, United are never more than one game away from a crisis, and it just gets pretty difficult to, live in this atmosphere, in this never-ending narrative of doom, essentially. So what I wanted to do today was just talk a little bit about Project 150 and the release of that news report from the Times on Wednesday about Project 150 and the ambitions that United have of getting back to the top of English football. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Ruben Amorim's part in that as well. So, yeah, it won't be too long an episode today, but I just did want to provide something to you, given it's been a few days since I came out with the bleak analysis. Well, the bleak thumbnail. If you were subscribed on YouTube, you would have seen the bleak thumbnail. I got a little bit of a joke back for that. But yeah, the situation is bleak at the moment. But when in doubt, zoom out. And I think that is the best thing that we can do right now. And we're going to need to zoom out because it's like a washing machine at the moment. It's like a washing machine. United will win one game and then everything will be like, oh, can we see United miraculously coming back here? And then they lose their next home match and then it's all dread and gloom and awfulness. And the news cycle keeps spinning round and, it's just very difficult to kind of be a Manchester United fan at the moment because United are 13th in the Premier League table. And this is as bad as I've ever seen it. And I'm sure if you listen to this or watching this, there's been very few times, depending on how old you are and how long you've been following United. Maybe you've seen worse than this previously. Maybe you haven't. I definitely haven't. But look, United have been mismanaged so poorly over the last few years that it's going to take time. It's going to take a group of people coming together to make good decisions and rebuild this team and this football club to the point where they're able to put United back where we feel United belong, and that is towards the top of the Premier League table, winning titles. And Project 150 consists of two words, Mission 21 and Mission 1. Mission 21 is to win the 21st English League title in the men's game. Mission 1 is to win the first Women's Super League title with the women's team. So, look, I think what we're seeing here is laying down the markers that the group of people that are in charge of Manchester United and in charge of the football operation at this football club, they finally want to put United back towards the top of the English game. And that is not something we could ever really say was the case, and it hasn't been the case for a long time. So I'm just going to talk about the bigger picture, talk about Ruben Amorim, and talk about if there's any hope. I'm sure you all remember this quote, right? Play and performance doesn't really have a meaningful impact on what we can do on the commercial side of the business. That was Ed Woodward in 2018. I've referenced that quote many times previously on this podcast. I think that was the representation of possibly why Manchester United are in the situation they're in now, but definitely a representation of the attitude of the people that were in charge of the football club until Ineos took control of the football operation and took control of turning this football club around. Now, under the Glazer ownership, the Glazer family, after Alex Ferguson and David Gill left, put Ed Woodward and a variety of managers in charge. Most of those Ed Woodward's calls. And you can see just in that quote there, I hate to keep bringing it back up, but ultimately this quote is why United kind of find themselves in the situation that they're in. If you're looking for a root cause, there's plenty of them. They all stem back to the Glazer family, but the people that they put in charge of the footballing operations at the time and the bad decisions that they've made have plunged United into the mess that we find them in now. So playing performance doesn't really have a meaningful impact on what we can do on the commercial side of the business. That was what Ed Woodward said. I think he was on a call, like a conference call that he said it. Essentially intimating that winning is nice, but not essential to the club's core business. And United have made a bunch of signings, spent a hell of a lot of money erroneously and terribly in the past. And it's those decisions now, and there's been plenty of decisions ever since Ed Woodward left as well. And yes, some decisions that Ineos have taken, which have exacerbated the problem in terms of Erik ten Hag and some of the signings that were made in the summer. Potentially, you can argue that. But the crux of the problem is that period from 2013 and maybe even dating back all the way to when the Glazer family took charge of this football club and took ownership of this football club back in 2005. Ultimately, we've been trending downwards since then. I know Sir Alex Ferguson managed to cover over the cracks, and United built probably their best team that they've had, or one of the best teams in club's history, in around that 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009 period. But ever since then, United have not got anywhere near those heights. So, the thing is, there's been so many poor decisions that have been made over the last few years that all of those bad decisions have ended up accumulating and putting United in the place that they're in now, on the bridge of, PSR trouble, FFP trouble, not really having any money to invest in transfer windows. That's because of all the erroneous spending that United have put forward and done, buying players who are not able to, who represent different things outside of success, whether that's, they sell a lot of shirts or they have a massive profile on social media, these kinds of decisions that have been made, not with playing performance and with the right interests in mind. So I think that is the most important thing to kind of lay down here. And as much as the fan sentiment at the moment is looking at Ineos and looking at the people that are in charge of the football operation at the moment and pinning the blame on them because they're digging United deeper into these problems, in some people's opinions, they've been dealt an awfully difficult hand and have to take decisions that are unpopular in order for United to get themselves out of the hole that they're in. I'm sure that James from Muppeteers did a fantastic video earlier this week, PSR versus PR, and just broke down the numbers in more detail. I think I kind of knew the grand scheme of things and the general scope, but like taking the time to dig into the financials and showing just how close United have been to failing PSR and how they need to make decisions in order to not do that so they can dig themselves out of the hole that they're in. There are unpopular decisions that have to be made at this point in time that ultimately down the line should mean that United come out of the trouble that they're in and would be able to start to rebuild the football team with the goal outlined in this Project 150 and Mission 21. So Mission 21 in the men's team, in the case of the men's team, delivering a 21st English League title for the club. That is a long way away. They hope to be able to achieve that by the 150th anniversary year of Manchester United as a football club in 2028. So we're in 2025 at the moment. It's just over 3 years away. Can they do it? I don't know. Really, it looks a hell of a long way away. It looks further away than it's ever really been before. And if they don't achieve it, can I see them achieving it at this moment in time? No, I can't really, because there's so much work to be done. But I think the general idea that this is being put down on paper, and there's a group of people that are in charge of Manchester United now, from making decisions from the very top to making decisions in terms of the profiles of players that come in the recruitment team, to making the decisions on the stadium, to making the decisions on every single player that walks in through that door and walks out of that door. I think there is an alignment between all of those people, which we've never really had previously. And look, I think Ineos and the people that they've wanted in the right places, I take Omar Barada as an example, and other people like Jason Wilcox. We know we had the Dan Ashworth problem, which ended within 5 months and reflected terribly on Ineos in the end. But what I think we have now is a group of people that have all come together, know their roles and responsibilities, and are all moving towards the same goal, which is to turn Manchester United Football Club around and to turn Manchester United into the force that everybody hopes that they will be. It's just they're trying to do it in a profitable and sustainable way and make this club stop losing 100 million plus a year. That's the most important thing. Find a place and find a way, or find many ways, to make United profitable again. Turning that around is going to be a really, really difficult thing. And I think there's plenty of things that they can do and they will need to do over the course of the next few years, which will help United do that. And some of the unpopular decisions that they've made are obviously unpopular, and I obviously disagree with some of them as well. But I think they are looking at this project and having enough balls, I suppose, like having the balls to make these decisions, even though they are unpopular. The ticket prices, I would just like to say again, I completely disagree with how they're pricing fans out of going to Old Trafford, these kinds of things. But there are some other cost-cutting measures which they've taken, which I think are getting a hell of a lot of bad press, which I think might just be necessary for United to start turning themselves around. And obviously, fan sentiment is at an all-time low. And regardless of any one result that United do get, the general trend is downwards. But it's about putting a stop to that, putting an end to it, and making sure that they're on the right track and moving back to becoming a successful football club. Now, Ruben Amorim has been, I think one of the big things that I've seen over the last week or so, especially with the end of the January transfer window, one of the big things I've seen is United sold or loaned out Antony and Marcus Rashford, and they are now not coming back. They probably won't ever play for Manchester United again. And Ruben Amorim has been let down by the group of people that he's meant to be trusting. And as well as this Mission 21 and Project 150 and Mission 1, that is the general broad scope of United turning themselves around. I just want to talk about Ruben Amorim's part in this and how, as much as people are suggesting that he's been let down, Ruben Amorim ahead of the Leicester game, I thought this was really, really interesting. Ruben Amorim ahead of the Leicester game essentially admitted that the decisions that were made with the players that left and the players that were brought in, the final decision was with him over the last few days. So I'm just going to quote him here. He said, "It was my decision to do these loans, even without any transfers." So talking about Marcus Rashford, Antony, and Tyrell Malacia. In the cases of, in Malacia's case, I suppose you can see a direct replacement that's come in for him in Patrick Dorgu, and we might see him over the course of the next few games get maybe a starting place because he is that natural left wing back I think we can all look at in the first team at the moment. And he could be the right fit for that. Whether he's at the required level and the right experience to be able to take on that mantle and deal with it is, we'll have to wait and see over the next few months. But in the case of Antony and Marcus Rashford, the general sentiment here was, as much as Antony's been a complete flop signing and cost the club 85 million quid or whatever, United are obviously going to, find it difficult to offload him unless he absolutely flies at Betis over the next few months. Him and Marcus Rashford leaving the club in the same window without a direct replacement was seen to be the club letting Ruben Amorim down. But he has gone out and said in his press conference ahead of the Leicester game, "It was my decision to do these loans even without any transfers." And I think that is a really, really interesting underline of how Ruben Amorim is part of this structure, working all together to bring United back, or start making the right decisions in order to create the wiggle room to bring United back to back up the table. Let's just say that. Now, he has said the results for him, the home defeats, all of them that we're seeing, are harder for him than the board. But he knew, and the board knew at the time that he joined, that the system that he's trying to play and that he's trying to implement, if you're implementing it mid-season with a group of players that are unable to do it because he didn't really think that these players were able to do it. It will be difficult and things will get tough. And look, as long as United don't get relegated from the Premier League, I think the season in the league is pretty much done. Even a good run of form over the next few months, which is looking unlikely at the moment in the league, probably won't get United that high up the table. So I think the position that you're looking at, 13th, 14th, or whatever it is at the moment, is just the way that it's going to be. And I think people will have to get used to that. But Ruben Amorim also spoke about the two new signings, Aiden Heaven and Patrick Dorgu, that have been made. He described them as the right profile for us in the moment. So I just wanted to look at the squad on the whole and the bigger picture. When in doubt, zoom out, as I say. The bigger picture here of how we're going to need to be patient with this. It's so difficult in the media landscape nowadays, and there's tons of updates every day. Social media moves so quickly, football news moves so quickly that it's really easy to kind of get stuck into the misery, especially when your team is losing. It's really easy to get stuck in the misery and never be able to see outside of that. Look, I think you just have to look at the situation that Ineos and Ruben Amorim, when he's come in, started out dealing with, and then look at where United need to get to in order to kind of turn things around. So Amorim, I think, has essentially explained that it's going to be his decision to change the system and to stick with it, because he doesn't want to confuse the message to the players, and down the line, when he does want to change the system, maybe his messaging is going to be a bit confused. And maybe you can look at Erik ten Hag's example when he started and say that Erik ten Hag tried to do it the right way, changed his system, and ultimately that might have been one of the key reasons why his system looked like the way it did over the course of the next year and a half, or however long it was, which ultimately led to him losing his job. But Ruben Amorim, I think, regardless of the players that United are trying to sign here and whether they fit in his system or not, I think there's a correlation, there's a direct relationship between what Ruben Amorim wants out of the system and the players that play in his system, and the players that United should be targeting in general in terms of their recruitment. They share a lot of the same characteristics in terms of physicality and technicality and size and height and all of these kinds of things. Very, very important that United go and get players who are able to kind of hang with modern Premier League football, because they just don't have enough players who are capable of doing that at the moment. And I will talk about that, some of the names that I've written down here at the moment that are just not even contributing to what United are trying to do, and how that's holding Amorim back himself, and how that's holding the club back, because they're paying these players and their wages at the moment as well. There are so many problems with this team at the moment that what this needs is a united front of people who are all doing their jobs well enough, and with the clear vision of this is where we're trying to get to, whether that's by 2028 or sooner or after that. Maybe they deliver on their promise and their hopes later than I think most people would hope that they do. The important thing here is to know that this, for everybody who's listening to this, or for everybody who supports United, regardless of the noise that's going on, this is going to take time. This is going to take a hell of a lot of patience. It's going to take a hell of a lot of good decisions mounted on top of each other, not by us, but by the people who are running the football club and running the football team. It's going to take time. It will take good decisions. It will take the right idea, the right profile. You can only look at like Bournemouth, for example, and how, I'm not comparing United to Bournemouth, but just how important strategy is with player recruitment, and how Bournemouth have now built a team of players who are so adept and able to play Premier League football. This is Bournemouth. This isn't Manchester United, but Bournemouth went to Old Trafford. I've been to Old Trafford a few times and smashed United on their own patch. It's really important that there's a clarity between Amorim, Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox, and they all come together and make the same decisions, aligned and as units. He spoke, Amorim spoke about the players that United are trying to sign, and spoke about how important the profile is. That's never something that United have been trying to look out for, really, outside of Erik ten Hag. Profiles are so important. Attitudes of players are so important. And when I just name this list of players to you here, how many of these are the right profiles for Manchester United now looking at it, right? There are a bunch of players that I could potentially list for who could fetch a lot of money into, like Garnacho, for example, has been talked about being sold. I know that there's a big split with maybe most of the sentiment being don't sell him within the fan base, but there's other players like Mason Mount and Andre Onana at the moment who, through injury or through underperformance, might not be at United if they're able to shift them on in the long term. Mason Mount, in his case, will have to, clear up his injury record, and let's hope that happens. But look at all of these players: Tom Heaton, Johnny Evans, Christian Eriksen, Victor Lindelof, Casemiro, Luke Shaw, and then the loaned out players, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Anthony, and Tyrell Malacia. All of those players, that's 10 players that I've listed in that list there that United have been paying or are paying a part of their wage, or have been up until January and the loan departures of like Malacia, for example. That's 10 players that United are currently paying that either can't or are unable to or won't be able to feature in the system that Ruben Amorim is trying to build. So he's dealing with a squad of players that he's learning about these players each day and trying to get as many players as he possibly can, understanding the system that he wants to play. But some of them are just not going to be able or capable of doing it. And that list of 10 players there that I've just named, as I pointed out on social media over the last few days, that is money that United are wasting. They are absolutely wasting money. And that, until those players are offloaded or sold and there's money that's able to be raised, which will alleviate the PSR position and allow United to reinvest in the team, that's the kind of difficulty that Ruben Amorim has at the moment. He's trying to implement a style and a system on a squad of players that invariably are not able to deal with it and not able to hang with it. So what United are going to need to do is go and use each transfer market to go and add players who are capable of playing Amorim's way and players who are capable of dealing with modern football and high intensity Premier League football. They need to do that slowly. It's not a case of just do it all in one window. Maybe we'll see if they pull off some miracles in the summer, buy a big sale or something, and see how aggressive they go ahead of next season. But that's, United are so hamstrung at the moment. They pay massive wages to a lot of players. They find it really difficult to shift them on, but the room and the time for sentiment is gone. And ultimately, we can all look at this and sit and moan as much as we want about, not giving Amorim the right hand, but the club are restrained by the PSR position that they've been put in by signing players like Casemiro and like Anthony. So it's not a case of just clicking your fingers and then everything's magically sorted. This will take time. This will take patience. And I think that's the message that I'm trying to preach here. And that is the way that I look at the situation. It's incredibly, incredibly difficult to even do a podcast and talk about this because it's so miserable. It's so miserable at the moment. And the last one I did, I think it was earlier this week. I wanted to do a podcast earlier, but I haven't been able to. And, talking about negatives all the time is just really, really draining and really, really difficult. And hearing about negatives, if you're listening to this or watching this, is really, really difficult. And you just kind of go on this spiral of negativity, and then you think there's never an end in sight. What I'm trying to say on this podcast today is that have faith, because I'm taking it, have some faith that there's a group of people that now have the club's best interests at heart and are working to bring United back to the levels that we all expect of them. Like I say, it will be difficult and it will take time. But what I've seen this week from transfer deadline day and the fact that United didn't end up signing Mathys Tel, and he went to Tottenham and did barely touch the ball against Liverpool in the 4-0 defeat in the Carabao Cup on Thursday night. He'll probably end up scoring against United when United play Tottenham next Sunday. Obviously, that's just the narrative, and that's the way that things are going to go. I would bet money that happens. I got to be honest. But as much as that might be ahead of us in the immediate short term, there are more pressing concerns than just what we're seeing on the pitch now. I think the most important thing here is that Amorim tries to steady the ship as much as possible, tries to turn results around, and ultimately, if United are, I know there's fears about relegation, and I saw more relegation comments last week or in the last episode. United are going to get relegated because they can't outplay football teams and this kind of thing. It's not that bad to worry about yet. I wouldn't really worry about that. And if I'm potentially wrong and United get plunged into that conversation and through more awful results over the next few weeks, then I'll see and I'll maybe reevaluate my position. But I don't think it's a case of having to worry about that at the moment. But also, United aren't jumping up this league table anytime soon. And the quicker that we kind of take stock of the position that United are in and just accept the reality of it. Accepting the reality is so important here because the people that are in charge are accepting the reality and making decisions which are better for the long term than the short. Now, there was so much rage about not signing Tel on deadline day, and then the reports of how much Tottenham have paid, 10 million euros or whatever it is for a loan fee. Really? For a 19-year-old kid? Absolutely crazy. But obviously the sentiment on social media at the time was, I can't believe United didn't do this. They're letting Ruben Amorim down. They're letting him down. No, what they're doing is they're probably looking at the position that they have on the financials. Let's say they're within 2 to 5 million of breaking PSR rules. Would you prefer that, for example, United went and signed Tel on the terms that Bayern wanted and the terms that Tottenham did, go over their PSR, get a 10-point deduction when they submit their accounts and end up getting dragged into the actual relegation battle that everyone's afraid of? You know? Not gonna, like, I'm not saying it would turn around that quickly and it would be probably implemented next season, right? I'm going off topic. I'm going off piece here. But, there are so many important decisions that maybe we're not all privy to all of the time that have to be made in order to preserve United's difficult position and make sure that they don't overstep their boundaries and overstep the mark. But there's long-term planning going on here. And those 10 players that I just mentioned, Christian Eriksen will play some games for United again. Maybe we'll hopefully see a good goodbye for Johnny Evans. Victor Lindelof may play some matches before the end of the season. Casemiro and Luke Shaw as well. But ultimately, those players with Luke Shaw's injury record are not going to be at the club much longer. Tom Heaton, Johnny Evans, Christian Eriksen, Victor Lindelof are all out of contract at the end of the season. That's probably around £200,000 a week. No, 350, probably £400,000 a week worth in wages off the books automatically. That mounts up then to a certain amount each year that come off United's, outgoings. And ultimately, those players that I've just listed there, we know that they're not part of the project. We know that they won't be because of their age, because of their injury records, because of their general fit. What United need to do is gradually, over the course of the next few transfer windows, make sure that they clear out players like that, buy more players who are physically capable and technically capable of coming in and contributing to the high-energy system that Ruben Amorim wants and that Premier League football requires. And then they turn things around. Patrick Dorgu, we have seen him sign. The suggestions are £40,000 a week. That is way more in keeping with what United should be doing. And if that is a sign of things to come, that, let's say he comes in, he plays a lot of football, he actually does well, that's then a player that you can either sell on, and I'm not saying that they want to, because ultimately he should be a player that I think United can use moving forward for the long term. But he's on such a low basic wage in comparison to the rest of the team that if that wage structure is completely rebuilt with younger players who are hungry. Remember Ralph Rangnick talking about players on their first big contract or whatever? People love talking about Ralph Rangnick and the open heart surgery to the point where it's been so completely overdone. But that's an example of that happening. If the more that United can keep on to that strategy, identifying good talent, bringing them in with a desire and, an appetite to impress, while at the same time they're a hell of a lot cheaper and a hell of a lot less costly than the players I've just mentioned there. That is the way that United will turn this football club around. That is the way that we'll see better levels of performance. That is the way we'll see Ruben Amorim get exactly what he wants out of his players. And ultimately, United need to make several good decisions in a row consistently to turn things around. It's just not going to happen overnight. So that's kind of the message that I wanted to get across today, that regardless of when you're listening to this, whether that's after the Leicester game or it's before it, and you just go into the match, or you're just looking for something to listen to on a Friday night or whatever it is, I think this is a general message for me, breaking down what I thought of this Project 150 report. I know it's been floating around for a little while, but Mission 21 and Mission 1 ultimately reflect that the group of people that are in charge of the football club at the moment want the football club to win. And the position that they're in at the moment means that it will take a lot of time and a lot of wiggling in order to put themselves back on the path. This is not the era of playing performance doesn't really have a meaningful impact on what we can do commercially. That is not the same thing. The people that are in charge have changed. The sentiment has changed within the football club. It's just we're not seeing it yet because of all of the poor decisions mounting on top of each other and putting United in a place where they're barely scraping by on profit and sustainability rules. And you can talk about whether that's an excuse or not. And you would much prefer that United went and signed the latest shiny player who could, come into the team and ultimately probably score as many goals as Rasmus Højlund is scoring at the moment, because the attack doesn't work. For me, as I said it on the last episode, the most important thing is to address the wing backs first, because they play a massive role in whether your team is defending or attacking and how quickly they can transition from one area of the pitch to another, one transition defensively to a transition in an attacking sense, and vice versa. That is so important. And constructing the team with players that Amorim feels he can use and replacing the players that I've just listed there, and that's not even all of them, by the way, replacing those players with players who he's able to use and who he's able to move forward with, and getting a striker that can score a lot of goals. They are the most important things, but it just will take time and patience. When in doubt, zoom out. And that's what I've tried to do today on this episode of the Promised Land podcast. Hopefully you can just change your thinking if you're worried. And look, I'm worried too, of course. It's a really difficult time to follow United at the moment. And it's just really difficult to kind of watch United turn up to each game, seeing them lose and then seeing the same thing over and over again. But just have a little bit of patience, and have a lot of patience, actually. Have a lot of patience, but just have a bit of faith that there is now a group of people who I think are aligned between what each of them are trying to do, and that is win. That's the most important thing to say. It doesn't matter if United just go and get top 4 each year, and that's it. The ambition is going to be greater than that. As important as getting Champions League qualification is to the financials and how much of a difference it makes, that was the maximum desire from the people that were in charge of the club previously. Now we have a completely new team in charge of the football operation that wants to win. It's just they're coming from the lowest possible ebb that I think we've ever seen Manchester United be in. That I have anyway. Maybe if you're a little bit older than me and you've seen some of the worst years, let me know how it compares. But yeah, I just wanted to drop this episode a little bit of I thought it'd be a quicker one. It's 34-ish minutes. So never mind. But I'll be back after the Leicester game to talk about what I've seen. But I just wanted to give you my thoughts on the Project 150 and the alignment of the people that are running this football club and the work that's going to have to go into turning Manchester United around. I just wanted to bring that to you. But this is the Promised Land, a Manchester United podcast. Please subscribe on Apple and Spotify and YouTube as well. Leave a comment and like the video on YouTube. And follow me on social media too, at @_Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm also on Blue Sky. The link is in the description. And I'll see you soon. I'll be back just after the Leicester game to reflect on what's happened there. But yeah, hopefully you think that you can listen to this whenever it is at any time over the next few months, because I think we're going to have to wait it out and see how things go. But just as bad as things look at the moment, there's ambition to turn it around. So I'm just going to keep the faith. Until next time, it's been the Promised Land with me, Scott. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching.